Okay, over to Sebastian and Dasha.
Satish, thank you very much for inviting us, and thank you for having this topic here discussed. And without consulting too much with Asha, I have to tell her that we will not get any slideshow, but open a discussion with you, and I hope that you will be okay to participate to this discussion. The topic is about diversity, and we cannot bring our idea about diversity, where we are within ICANN about this topic, but I wanted to have your inputs. What do you think it's important about diversity? What do you think we can do to, if we need to enhance diversity? Then my first question will be, can you tell us what are the different elements for you who are important about diversity in the internet governance, in ICANN arena, in ISOC, in IGF, and the different other places, IETF, and so on and so forth. Now it's time for you to participate. The internet, it's again working. The government decide to open it again, and you can participate. You are really welcome to give your voice on this topic, please.
Region.
Renata, region.
Language.
Language.
Economic.
Economic.
More women.
More women.
As in gender equality.
It's interesting because the way you are talking about, are we talking about diversity?
I think so.
Because you see how you present thing, it's gender equality.
Yes.
It's not gender diversity. Then is it different for you, or is it the same thing?
Gender equality as in inclusion of my gender in that diverse ecosystem. What I'm trying to say is, like, I want more representative.
If I could just jump in here.
Yes, you can, definitely.
Thank you, Sebastian. I think the point Sebastian is trying to get at is the correct term gender diversity? I want to ask this question. Is the correct term gender diversity? What does diversity mean? Any thoughts? Yes, sir.
Different voices,
different concerns, like multilingualism and cultural diversity type of things.
I mean, diversity can be of gender diversity, it can be...
No, I'm only now referring to gender diversity, not other types of diversity. So is the correct term for gender, is it diversity? The young man with the fancy t-shirt that I envy so much. Go ahead.
Definitely when we meet the next time, I'll get one t-shirt for you as well.
Please do.
Talking about diversity...
Just to her, it's not equality.
But as we are now discussing on diversity and not equality, so back on diversity aspect of it, diversity, I assume, includes consideration of multiple perspectives or multiple options. You have a sense of a choice. So then it all depends on how do you define gender. So if you define gender as a biological construct, you might have a very limited diversity. But if you look at gender as something like a social construct, then everyone has his own choice as to which variety of gender he wants to choose.
Yes, yes. Okay, that's a fair point. And I think you're kind of leading to what I wanted to make, the point I wanted to make, which is in terms of geographic, language, economic, region, I would say yes, diversity would be the correct term. But in terms of, or perhaps not, let me come back to that a little bit later, but in terms of gender, I would urge everyone to use the correct word, correct term, which is gender balance and not gender diversity. Because women, and let's assume now there is, let's assume now that we put aside the third gender or the fourth gender. If you only look at the two main genders of male and female, then the correct term is gender balance, because women are not a diversity. we are not a minority, we hold up half the sky, so we should be equally represented in any discussions where for internet. So that's why I would urge you to all use the word balance, so that we are representative of in the internet discussion as we are in the human race, which is half. Over back to you.
You agree with that?
Totally.
Good. I wanted to come that little by little to bring you to that stage, but now we have the answer. One of my points why we can't talk about gender diversity, it's because if we talk about gender diversity, it's you have one man or one woman in a group, you have the diversity. And it's not what we are looking for. It's why I think it's really important that we bring the term balance. And then after that, even if we keep our title about diversity here, I think what we will need to discuss is how we can achieve that. Because diversity, geographic, economical, regional, and other things we will come back on, it's already difficult to get, and the gender balance I think must be the first step, but it's not easy to get there. And now, have you any idea, thoughts about how you will help those organizations to get to the gender balance, in the gender balance direction? It's so hard that you don't have the voice on that. May I go ahead, please?
Yeah, one very, what is drastic step would be obviously reservations for sex. This is a very drastic step, and but other parts could be women has to hold, sisterhood. We have to hold each other's hands and help cross the barriers. I mean, whether it is geographical, cultural, educational, social, economical, we have to hold hands and be together. And as we know, like single voice cannot make much impact, but sisterhood is definitely one option.
I would like to add something over here. So one thing which is lacking majorly in India is that women basically don't know what is existing for them in the society, in technical fields especially. So encouraging them, spreading awareness would be the first step, and I think it's very much needed in a country like India.
Just a comment, when we're talking about diversity, are we only talking about gender, or are we also looking at the specially abled people, because they are also part of the society? So diversity should also encompass them. And even within not only the gender, it is also the communities who are there. There are various indigenous communities who are not represented in mainstream. I think that also should come into the diversity factors.
I would agree with you on that. I would suggest perhaps that we structure this this discussion now to in a point by point or area by area. Perhaps we could start with gender and then move on to language, economic, and then able-bodied versus physically challenged. Would that make sense, or do you want to discuss it all in one group?
No, we can do that, but before I would like to be sure that we didn't miss any important category of diversity, because we already talk about geographic or regional balance or representation, or we talk about language, we talk about disability, and we talk obviously about gender balance. But any point of this diversity discussion, gender balance or the other, you take one and you tell us what, if you have one idea what we can do for enhancing that.
Representation.
Yeah, but how do we improve the representation? So I think in order for this session to have any value, I think it's good to have some solid suggestions. How do we improve the representation?
Single word, empowerment.
How do we improve the empowerment?
So,
yes, sir.
So I actually was, thinking, reflecting a bit on, these different parameters which we have outlined.
Yes.
And I have some sort on some introspection. I feel that if we look at ourselves as an individual internet user, so I'm just considering my case. So for example, maybe I'm a man. I was a software engineer. I was working as an entrepreneur. And so there are a lot of these parameters are interlapping with each other, and I wanted to know as to how these, what are the weights which we can assign to each of these parameters to say consider a diversity index for each individual of some sort. So, for example, when you look at me, you can probably give me a diversity score of say 0.7 out of 10 because of I have some advantages and some disadvantages in some of these parameters. So, probably can this, and I feel, once you have something like, say, a diversity score for each individual, you can probably also link it with what he said, our friend here from Bangalore. So he said that, we have to categorize it into two broad categories of, someone who has an experience and someone who doesn't have this experience. So I feel somewhere, probably understanding weightages to these diversity will be a positive way forward. That's just a suggestion.
Thank you. Any other comment?
Yeah, I want to build on Pratik's comment. The idea of aligning skills. So when you have different types of background to get people together to discuss, and also to make a step forward. I think one interesting idea is to think about self-identification, because we discussed several different elements. But I might identify, for example, as a Latina woman in technology. And this is not something that is within that category as we described. So self-identification as a path to respect diversity. Who are you and what do you bring?
Thank you. We have two and three more people talking, and we will stop here. Thank you.
I think it's really important to mainstream these issues that belong to the various categories that we're talking about when we talk about diversity. Because one experience that I've had is when we recently organized a Digital Citizen Summit in Delhi. When we had sessions on gender, only women were participating in it. So there's this idea that gender only belongs to women. It's not a men's issue. So men won't come to those sessions when we try to talk about what are the ways in which women are being affected by the internet. Similarly, when we talk about indigenous people, other people would not want to attend. So I think it also has to be an issue-based kind of a discourse where we try to connect all these issues and try to show how the issues of one group are also related to another group, and they're not just something that is limited to one particular stakeholder group.
Thank you.
In a person, there might be different characters. But as a person, I can speak about only one community, because I may have different interests, but one interest in that might be dominating, and at the end I am going to talk about that. So it should be the representatives from different diversity should be there to represent present their voice, to make sure that the community, this community need to reach the people, farmers, aborigines, everyone, and let them know how things are done. That's it.
Thank you. Last,
Yes.
please.
There has to be some baby steps at least, and I'm sure the CCWG, the diversity subcommittee, etc. at ICANN is working on it. Simultaneously, if you're looking at, for an example, if you're looking at ICANN, how much of openness do we have to people with disability? So we have to encourage people, and you cannot get everyone in the room first, but those who are actually working in the community. For example, there's a gentleman in Bangladesh who's been to, say, APR, IGF or ethnic. those kind of people, if they're brought in, they can bring more from their community or represent their community. Those are examples that if people are coming out, if they are encouraged to participate, it helps. Similarly, when you are talking about indigenous people at ICANN through the fellowship, if they are encouraged to represent their communities and they become champions in their community, they can still bring more people. So people who are involved need to get more also. That's one way of looking at it.
Thank you. Asha, you want to say a few words, your conclusion or conclusions?
Okay, oops. I know we're running out of... Hello? Now it's working. We're running out of time, but I hate to end the session without having some kind of conclusion to move forward, because I'm an engineer, that's how I think. But today we discussed 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 different categories in which we could classify diversity. We had some discussion about whether or not that's the right way to go. Should we classify them, or should we just put them into 2 categories? I believe that my personal opinion is that we need to look at the challenges of each category in order to be able to find the solutions for each category. We had a suggestion about coming up with a diversity index or a score for individual. We had some solutions given, such as self-encouragement, bringing and hand-holding, and also current participants, bringing in participants from their group, and also encouraging within their own groups more diverse participation, so that in general the diversity can be improved. I think this is a very, it's unfortunate we had very limited time, but I think it's worthwhile to continue this discussion. I also believe you're right, I don't know who said this, the group of the people in this room do not represent completely diverse interests, but I think we're more diverse than many of the other sessions I've been to in where internet governance is concerned in other forums. So I would actually just want to conclude by saying, please participate more. Please see people who are in your community who you don't believe are participating. Please encourage them to participate, because I think there is one thing that was mentioned here today that I've heard many times, which is encouragement. When you encourage another person who doesn't normally participate, when you encourage that person to participate, you are improving, you are doing your share in improving diversity. And I'll stop here. Thank you.
Thank you, Asha. Thank you for your participation. It was very useful, this exchange, and I hope that at the end of the day, we all together can do things hand in hand to improve diversity. Thank you.
Thank you, Sebastian. Thank you, Asha, for the very interactive session.